Yes. Okay. So I'm going to actually start off with the polls first, crossing my fingers that this works. Okay. This is a good sign. Click start to activate the poll. Okay, so you can text. This is just a word, so you just type in a word, or you can go to that website. So let's see if this works.
I don't know where to type it.
Maybe it says text your vote, maybe type the number and then in the text, I'm going to try it myself. This is why we are testing this out. And most people have free texting.
Oh.
And then I'm going to just type in my text message a word and see what happens. And then send it. And let's see if anything pops up. Ah, my word showed up. So yeah, so you just type in the number as sending a text message, and then in the actual conversation, type a word. And then that should work. It's supposed to create a word cloud. There's not much of a word cloud if you only have a few people. Otherwise, I think that website should work. Let me try doing that too. Okay. So we got, I'm going to also try the website, see what that looks like.
It's anonymous, I guess.
Yes, I did that deliberately. Well, I assumed it was going to be anonymous. Event code. Okay. The yellow's not a great color, but I don't know if I can change that. Okay, let me try second word. And I just misspelled my word. And instead of writing fun, I wrote fin. Okay, well, at least we know this works. So I have a second poll that I want to try. So a different program, see if this one works. Okay, this is what I was afraid of. This is the second one. You can't even see it. It's like half off the screen. So that's a dud. Okay, well, at least I know one of these works. Thank you for testing that out with me.
Sure.
All right, so on to the actual material. So it's week 4. We are finishing up chapter 2. So we did do one section of chapter 2 in week 2 when we were talking about linear equations. And so now that we finished up chapter 1, we're going back to chapter 2, which is all about functions and their graphs. So everything from this point on, we are going to be working with functions and we're going to be working with graphs. Everything going forward. So you're going to be graphing every single week from here on out. So we've got 6 sections. There's 2.2, which is functions. 2.3 and 2.4 and 2.5, those are all mainly graphing. And so I recommend for those that you use Desmos.com to help you with the graphing, and that will make that stuff not so bad. So Desmos is just an online graphing calculator, and I recommend using it every week because it will make trying to graph by hand is going to be very difficult. So I would recommend using that website. And then we've got 2.7 and 2.6 and 2.7, which are combinations of functions and inverse functions. So if you took MA104, we covered functions in the very last week of class, just very briefly, basically the same as section 2.2 here. And then now we're going to go in a deep dive into functions. Basically, the rest of the class is going to be about functions and the different types of functions. So in 2.4, we look at a library of parent functions. There are linear functions, quadratic functions, rational functions, exponential functions. Each week, we're going to focus on another type of function. So basically, college algebra is the study of functions, but we have to get a lot of stuff out of the way in order to be able to study functions fully. So where do functions come into play? A lot of people are like, why do I need to understand this? Well, what a function is a relationship where you have an input and you get one output. So anything in real life where you plug something in and you get something out is a function. And a lot of stuff in real life deals with functions. A lot of things in business, you're doing a lot of calculations. If I do this, what is my outcome? That's basically you're using the definition of a function. Computer science, when you're programming, you are programming functions. So computer science is basically built on the concept of a function. Engineering does a lot with functions because, again, you're plugging in something, you're engineering something, and then something else comes out. A lot of circuits, when you're trying to get it to do things, you have current going in, it goes into your circuit, does all these fancy things, and then other things happen. A lot of formulas that we use, like you're plugging in numbers, like if you're finding the area of something, length times width, you plug in your length and your width, you get the answer out. So anything we have formulas, area, if you're converting temperatures, any unit conversions are functions. If you're using formulas to determine your interest or anything like that's, even banking, those all use formulas. Those are all functions. So as long as there's only one answer that pops out, you are working with a function. So they're everywhere. We just don't normally see them as equations. We don't see them mathematically, but they are there. So the concepts behind the function here is really important and pervasive in basically everything you do. So what sections are prerequisites this week? I've got the list here. The important things you're going to be doing is solving linear equations. You're going to be doing a lot of factoring. As I keep warning you guys, you're going to be factoring every week. And you're going to be doing graphing. So those are like the three biggest things that you're going to be doing, is solving, factoring, and graphing. So this week you've got your discussion. This is another math-based discussion. You have your ungraded practice assignment, the assignment, and then the midterm. And so it's really important. We're going to spend some time talking about the midterm because it's going to be different from the quiz, and I don't want anybody to be unprepared for the midterm because I want to make sure that you guys do really well on it. So we'll start with the discussion. Okay, so again, this is going to be another one where you're showing your work just like week 2. So you're going to have to start with some research because we're going to be using real life situations. So you want to research a rideshare or local taxi company to find out their rates. How much do they charge for a flat rate? Do they have any fees? How much do they charge per mile? How much do they charge per minute? Most taxis only charge per mile, but Uber and Lyft tend to do per mile and per minute. So the intent of the discussion is you're going to find a company, be it a taxi company or you look up Uber or Lyft, and you're going to write an equation to determine how they calculate how much you pay. That's what we're going to be doing. So part 2, write an equation that you can use to figure out what your fare would be, basically to help you determine, what you're going to be charged. With a taxi, since they usually just do per mile, it's pretty easy. You can get an equation, and actually tends to be a linear equation, where if they charge $1 per mile, then that would be your slope. So you can use y equals mx plus b, and the flat rate would be your y-intercept, your starting amount. So you can get an equation, and then say you needed to use that taxi, and as long as you know what the distance is, which we can use on Google Maps, you can determine how much you're going to be charged. So that's a useful thing, especially if you're on a budget. Some people, they're like, okay, I can only spend this much on transportation this week, and so this might be helpful. If you're using Uber or Lyft, those usually charge per mile and per minute. So you're going to have 2 input variables. There's usually still some sort of flat rate or a fee, but you'll still have 1 output. And so your equation's a little more complicated because we have 2 things that you're plugging in. You're plugging in the number of miles and then the number of minutes, but you can still get an equation. So once you get that equation, then you want to take a situation, a hypothetical situation. Let's say you're going from home to work or home to the grocery store or something. You're going to figure out how long it takes, what the distance is, and you're going to put that into your equation to figure out what the total cost will be for you. And you want to make sure you're showing all of those steps. Now, one common thing that I hear, especially for people that are in small towns, is we don't have Uber and Lyft, or we don't have a taxi. Some small towns only have a bus service. Before I lived in Kansas City, I lived in a small town where we had 1 cab, and then they lost their insurance, and so we had no cab. taxi company at all. So if that is your situation, pretend you live somewhere else. Just, you know, you could be like, oh, maybe I'm going to visit New York City, where you know you have to take taxis. Let me pretend I'm in New York City and I'm going from some hotel to the Statue of Liberty or something. So you can make it work. It doesn't have to be for where you live. You can pick it for a different town if you want. But it does need to be either a taxi, Uber, or Lyft. And Uber and Lyft are pretty much everywhere these days. In the discussion, there is a link to good websites for that. Actually, let me pull that up. Should have, I thought about it beforehand. I would have opened my Blackboard up prior to this so I can get the discussion up. But I wasn't thinking. Okay, so I'm going to just pull up. This is one of my current classes. Okay. So, Ride Guru or taxifarefinder.com are great places where you could try to find these. So, I actually prefer taxifarefinder.com. So, we'll do that. So, you can plug in a specific location of where you're going, or if you don't have any taxis in your area, you can pick airports and cities. So, and you can choose from a list. It is still loading. I don't know. Okay, there we go. Oh, yeah, let's allow. Okay, and then you can also do average if your city is not there, so that's kind of nice too. Okay, so I'm in Kansas City, so I can pick Kansas City. It plugged it in. Now it disappeared again. Let's try airport, see what pops up. Okay. It had, I don't know, it had it and then it disappeared. We'll just do average. And usually this works. Normally it's not being very helpful. It seems to not be wanting to cooperate with me as usual. And now I have to wait for it to load. Okay, well, let's say I'm going to, let's say if Grantham University will pop up here. Nope. So we'll just pick this high school. And then let's say I want to go to Kaufman Center. That is the name of our music hall. So Kaufman Center for the Performing Arts. So I'm just picking random places here. And then let's say click Get Fare. Okay. So it tells us the approximate cost. It tells you the initial fare. So that's your flat rate. Additional metered fare. So that's the total per mile. So that's not as detailed as you want. You have to kind of backwards figure that out. Otherwise, I can click here and see Uber, Lyft, or more. And this is Ride Guru, the other one that I had. Okay, so it gives you, if you use Ride Guru, it tells you the various prices, and then you'd want to click Info and Breakdown, because that tells you how much your initial charge is. There's a safe ride fee. So again, this has a metered fare, $21.29. So that's the total fare. I would have to divide that by the number of miles in order to figure out the per mile. Some websites like Uber's website and Lyft's website do actually give the detail, the per mile and the per minute fee. So it depends on where you're looking. I know the app can give you that information as well. So these are at least give you an idea of, you know, the prices, and then you can get estimates and you can compare and do all that sort of stuff. So that's what you're doing with the discussion, is you're taking real data and then you're going to get an equation to figure out what your fare would be. Now your math should match whatever, that website said. If you get the same answer as that website, that means your equation's correct, because you're going to want to plug in your numbers and make sure that you get the same answer. So you're just going to work through that math, and then part 3 is the actual reflection based off of the material for the week. So the first question is your equation a function, why or why not? So you need to take a look at what you wrote, see if it fits the definition of a function. Then, which of the parent functions covered in 2.4 does your equation resemble? So there is actually 2.4, there is a picture of parent functions. So I actually have a screenshot of it because I use it so often that I saved the picture. So these are the parent functions. Oh, that is really small. So this is just taken from the textbook. But there's 8 parent functions, and so you would look at the form of the equation to see which form of the equation is most similar to yours, what shape seems to match what your equation would look like, that sort of thing. So these are the parent functions. So those are in 2.4. And then what transformations do you need to do to go from the parent function to your equation? So transformations, those are from 2.5. So you'd have to look at question 2 or section 2.5. Transformations are like you shift your equation left or right, or you move it up and down, or you're stretching your equation out. Those are what we mean by transformations. So usually people can get the first 2 questions here pretty easily. It's usually the transformations that people struggle with a little bit. So I would make sure that you take some time to read that section carefully. You can play around in Desmo so that you can see what a transformation does and you can understand it visually. Getting the equation is usually not too bad for people, and the information is pretty straightforward there. So are there questions on the expectations for the discussion? Okay, so next let's talk about the assignments. So your ungraded practice assignment is from chapter 2. You're doing the end of chapter review exercises. You're not doing every problem. We can skip the first few because that was 2.1. So you're picking the odds, and you can do some of from these sections or these problems that are suggested. And then your week 4 assignment, the graded one, again, you have 10 problems from the reading, and make sure you're showing your work. You can scan your work. Genius Scan is a phone app that you can use for scanning. Make sure it's dark enough to read. If you're doing it in pen or pencil, have a single file, everything in order, easy to read, that sort of thing. Okay, midterm. This is really important. So your midterm is twice as long as a quiz. So your quizzes are 10 questions, so your midterm is 20 questions. Your quiz is an hour. For the midterm, you have 2 hours. So it's twice as long. Everything's multiple choice. You need to complete everything in one sitting. Very few people tell me that they run out of time, which is good sign, really good sign. I think I've only had a couple people say they run out of time. Most people, they are able to complete it in the time allowed. Just like the quizzes, you do need to submit your work. So make sure when you're doing the midterm, you're doing your work on paper, and don't throw it out because you need to turn that in so you can get partial credit. A lot of people do earn more points based off of their partial credit. People usually get 5 to 10 points at least, as long as you have all your work and your work is easy to follow. So that can make a difference of a letter grade, or 10 points on the midterm is equal to 5% of your grade. So that's a pretty big jump. If you are, if your work is all over the place when you take the midterm, you're welcome to rewrite it before you submit it to make it easier. Don't freak out if there's a 0 in the drop box. That just means it's been looked at and your scores have been added to your quiz or your midterm. So it's the same sort of format as the quizzes we've had so far. It's just longer. So because it's 20 questions, it covers a lot more material. It's covering everything from weeks 1 through 3. So 1 through 3. So functions, what you're learning this week, are not on the midterm. So you only have to worry about the first 3 weeks. So there's order of operations, evaluating expressions, factoring quadratics, multiplying polynomials, simplifying rational expressions and exponential expressions. So these were all in week 1. Then we've got solving. We've got solving linear equations, which was week 2, and then quadratic equations, which was week 3. There are 3 questions about lines. There's slope, getting the equation of a line, and then modeling, so that's word problems. So those were all week 2. Complex numbers, so there's a question involving that. So that's week 3. Now, the next 2 bullet points, you're solving 2 of the following. So these are randomly picked. So we have a test bank, and we've got a pool of questions, and they just randomly pick 2 out of there. So the first pool, there's going to be 2 questions, and you're going to pick from the same pool. You've got polynomial equations, rational equations, radical equations, and absolute value equations. So you're going to get 2 random problems that are in one of those 4 categories. You might end up with 2 rational equations, or you might end up with a polynomial and an absolute value. It's completely random, but there's going to be 2 questions pulled from there. Then there are 2 questions from another test pool with inequalities. So you're going to get 2 from rational inequalities, linear inequalities, polynomial inequality, or absolute value inequality. So you don't know which 2 you're going to get, but you don't have to do all 4. You're only doing 2 of those. So those are random. Then you've got graphing. So graphing is sort of covered. That was mostly week 2. So let's see, these were all week 3. Graphing is week 2. Analyzing equations and graphs, that was week 2. And translating English to math is also, I wrote week 3, that is week 2. I was thinking that's section 1.3, so that's where that 3 came from. So this is all stuff that was on the assignments and things that have been on the quizzes. So looking back over your assignments, maybe if your teacher allows resubmissions, resubmitting the assignments and reworking the problems can help you study. Looking back over the quizzes, you can see your quizzes if you go to the gradebook. You'd have to go to gradebook, click on the name of the quiz, click on the score of the quiz, and then your quiz pops up, and then you can view the questions on the quiz so you can study your quiz. And then you can pick problems from the textbook that fulfill these topics. So at least you know what to study here. You know what you are going to be quizzed on. So the top 5 most difficult, these are the ones that have been the lowest scoring. The worst scoring one has been linear models, the word problems. That's no surprise. People struggle with word problems. So I have a link here to linear function word problems for IXL. Then we have writing the equation of a line and finding slope. So that was your week 2 discussion. And then you had some of that in week 2. I have an IXL. This is writing a linear equation from 2 points because that way you have to do the slope and then write the equation. So you're practicing both in one step or one problem. Then simplifying rational expressions, those fractions. Everybody struggles with those, so I have a link there. Translating mathematics. So that fits in with the word problems. So I picked an IXL as writing equations to represent word problems just to practice that. And then analyzing graphs and graphing. There's not really one section in IXL to fit to practice that, but I'm hoping that as you work through the week 4 material where you do a lot of graphing, that will give you practice for that as well. So those are the top 5 most difficult topics. So to study for this, I recommend that you review all the past assignments and quizzes. The Chapter P and Chapter 1 pre and post tests from larsonprecalculus.com are great to use for studying, so I have a link there. Review all the past practice problems. You can do a cumulative review test for Chapters P through 2. If you do problems only 1 through 33, that's at the end of Chapter 2. And then practice problems from IXL.com. Now I think I still have my, yeah, I keep all of this in a spreadsheet. So the midterm, these are all the topics, so you don't see the questions here, but I keep track of like the averages. So these are the average scores for each class. You can see that the averages are quite good. They're in the 70s and 80s. So the overall average is an 80% on the midterm if you average across all courses. So, and then you can see that I keep track of the lowest scoring, and those are basically this is the percentage of people that get things, like half the students got linear models that question right. So that's how I keep track of how I figure out all of these things. Now this is exactly what I told you, all the topics. This is the order. Just a random equation because I don't know which one you're going to be asked. So this is the order, how I have everything mapped out with which week everything goes to. But as you can see, the averages overall are pretty good. That's really great for a midterm to have the average to be like a B. So that's awesome news. So I don't want you to freak out too much, but I also want to make sure that you do study, because if you don't study, it's going to be harder than you expect. So you do have to study, but your studying will pay off. So are there any questions about the midterm and the expectations there? All right, so then moving to the suggested schedule. So here's how I've arranged it all. So you can start working on this discussion almost immediately. You can start researching your rideshare or your taxi rates. You can even start writing the equations, because at this point, you know everything you need to know to write the equation. All you need was basically 1.3 and 2.1. So you have what you need to know to write the equation, but to actually answer the reflection questions, you do have to go through 2.2 and 2.4 and 2.5. But you can at least do part of the discussion already. So I have it spread out section by section. I forgot my 7, so I had to write. I don't know why I wrote it in instead of just typed it. Not sure what I was thinking there. Mapped out all the videos, picked practice problems. So your assignment is roughly in order. So reading through 2.2, you can do the first 2 problems. Then 2.3, you can do problems 3 and 4. And then problem 5 maps with 2.5. Then we got problem 6 with 2.6, and 7 with 2.7. So that maps up really nicely. And then I also have kind of split up the studying to help you review, to help you study for that, so you can kind of study a little bit at a time. So it's always good to not cram things in. The best way to remember is to study a little bit at a time. So definitely take breaks when you're studying. Do a little bit practice every single day. I read a study last year, I think it was, but there was an article that said that if you sit up straight, you have good posture while you're taking a test. They actually found that students performed better. Not sure why, but it doesn't hurt. You know, if you just remind yourself, oh, I need to have good posture, students actually performed better. So I don't know if it has something to do with you're sitting up straight, it makes your body feel more confident, and maybe then you're more confident in what you do. Bananas are also supposed to help you study. I remember there was a study done that found, I think it was the potassium in bananas actually aids in memory. So eat a banana while you're studying, maybe. Maybe eat a banana while you're taking your test. Definitely, do some research into study strategies. I do have some linked in the classroom that you can use to help you out as well. But definitely pace yourself. Don't rush with the studying. Make sure you have 2 hours to devote to do this, that you're not going to be interrupted. And then, focus on doing that on Tuesday. So are there any other questions? Actually, nobody's had any. Are there any questions? I shouldn't say any other. Are there any questions? All right. So that's good. I actually, if you've noticed, I have a new headset because I heard that when I record these at my house, it's a lot more echoey than when I record them in the office. I'm hoping this headset will help with that in the recording. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining me so that I wasn't by myself. I appreciate that. And good luck on the midterm. If you guys have questions, feel free to reach out to me. If it's grade related, I can't answer it, but if it's content related, I'd be happy to help you out if you need additional links. There are plenty of links in the classroom under the additional resources and live session link. If you go to the videos, I have tons of videos for week 4. I have videos on functions, on the function composition, on inverse functions. So I think there's like 3 different hour-long videos on all of that stuff. So definitely use those. And then, of course, studying for the midterm, watching old videos should help too. So, all right. Well, I'm going to sign off and continue writing my talk for Friday that I'm giving. I'm about halfway done with the talk. It's a 45-minute talk, so it's going to be a long talk. So actually, before I close everything, so my talk is on the live sessions and the benefits for doing these for students who are learning math online. So if you have quotes, or if you have found benefit in these, if you can, I would love to hear from you so I can put that in my talk. I can say, oh, this is what students are saying about this. So if you feel inclined, no pressure, you don't have to. I've got 2 students that are giving me like little blurbs. But if you feel like you have something to say about why people should be doing these or how it's beneficial, you can email that to me and that would be awesome. So that's on Friday. So you'd have to get it to me by tomorrow, by the end of the day tomorrow. So I can put that in my talk. All right. That's all I've got for you guys. So hopefully you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. And I will see you guys next week, next Wednesday. Actually, wait. Yes, I think next Wednesday we're okay. I am starting an online class myself. But I think that it actually has live sessions you're required to go to, unlike what we do at Grantham. But I think that's at 7, so I think we'll be okay. If I have to reschedule, I'll send an email and about that. But yeah. All right, so I'm gonna go. Thank you guys for joining me. Again, email me if you have any questions, and have a great night.